Hi. So first of all, you'll have to address whatever that has been raised by the examiner the other day, particularly on the problem statement. So you mentioned that you actually attended the research methodology course, right? In the research methodology course, if you have attended, they would have highlighted exactly how to form your problem statement, how to write your research objectives, and so on. So based on the comments on the examiner, looks like what you have done so far doesn't actually fulfill that. For example, how are you going to measure what you're trying to do? You mentioned that there is no if I remember it correctly, you mentioned something about there is no improvement in terms of IoT in Libya and so on. But how do you measure or how do you address this in your thesis? You're not addressing it, so it's not exactly a problem statement you want to highlight in your thesis. So all these things you have to actually change. That's for sure for now. Based on your proposed edits, the problem statement is still not addressed, right? So let's assume, let's give a different scenario. Um, we're talking about an IoT device, and the problem is IoT devices can work fine, no problem, but it uses a lot of energy. And if you have to deploy it under solar power, whereby you don't have continuous power, you cannot actually have this device being up 24 hours. This is your problem. This is your problem statement. Then your research objective is to make use of the solar power capacity and do something in such a way that the power can be retained until the next recharge cycle. That's your objective. On how you can do it, for example, instead of sending messages every 5 minutes once, what this IoT device will do is probably reduce the communication, and probably it just sends one message every 1 hour. But in the meantime, every 5 minutes, maybe it will do the measurement, aggregates it, keeps it locally, and every 1 hour it will send this message out. So potentially, this will actually address the issue of the power being depleted before the next recharge cycle. Now, that's the problem statement. That's the research objective. And finally, the solution is what I mentioned about the aggregation and so on. This is how it's supposed to be. Whatever research problem that you highlight, you will have to come up with an objective that tries to address this problem statement. And finally, in your so-called thesis, you need to address the solution itself. Now, coming back to what you wanted to do, you wanted to do a survey kind of research. With the survey kind of a research, there's only one thing you can actually do, whereby as a problem, one potential problem is you can actually survey and see whether there's existing research or literature in the domain of IoT application on agriculture in Libyan context or Libyan country context. If it doesn't exist, what you can do is, your problem statement is, not much literature is out there about the topic of using IoT for agriculture purposes in Libya. So that's your problem, right? You don't have enough material. So what is your objective? Your objective is to actually survey all the research materials, literature review out there. And if it doesn't have enough, you're going to do your own survey with the people or the relevant stakeholders in Libya in figuring out what's their challenges and so on. And that's your solution. Your solution is you have developed a questionnaire, and then you have people that are, how do I say, affected or stakeholders being able to actually take up the questionnaire and then provide the results on what they perceive or what are their issues and so on. Now, coming back to what Ms. Chong have asked the other day is, if you have come up with a questionnaire, how are you going to validate this? Who's going to tell you that the questionnaire that you did is good, or it is good enough for you to actually carry out the questionnaire later on? For that, you have a few options. One of it is to actually ask subject matter experts. If you know someone in Libya that is involved in the domain of IoT / agriculture, and it's in the ministry level, or anyone that is in charge of the whole thing, you can actually send to a couple of them. Maybe in the same department you have few people, or you can send one to them and one to Ministry of Agriculture, and another one is, I don't know, Ministry of Education in Libya. Anyone that you know, you must know them. And then you provide a letter stating that they have gone through the questionnaire and they agree that the type of questionnaire that you're asking along with the answers that you have provided is sufficient, and in their opinion as an expert, they agree that the questions are suitable to be asked. That is what you're going to use to actually answer the examiner. If they ask, how do you know these are the right questions to ask? So you have validated it with an expert, but they have to agree with what you have said. And afterwards, you use this questionnaire, send it to the relevant people, get their results, summarize, and then publish or present the results in your thesis. That's the final finding. Hi, so first of all, you'll have to address whatever that has been raised by the examiner the other day, particularly on the problem statement. So you mentioned that you actually attended the research methodology course, right? In the research methodology course, if you have attended, they would have highlighted exactly how to form your problem statement, how to write your research objectives, and so on.